The film begins with Harold running breathlessly through the grassland, escaping from German soldiers in a jeep who are shooting at him and giving chase. Harold manages to reach a forest and collapses. As he catches his breath, he hears the voices of the soldiers looking for him, so he quickly crawls to hide beneath the roots of a tree. The soldiers appear at the spot where he fell and shout, looking for his body. Harold waits, and when everything falls silent, he comes out and checks the surroundings. While adjusting his uniform, he sees a soldier slowly walking by the fences. Harold, fearful, hides behind the wall with his dagger. It's a weak and exhausted soldier. As soon as Harold realizes the soldier can't stand, he rushes towards him and steals his gun. Harold's actions scare the soldier, but then Harold helps him up. Inside an abandoned house, the soldier sits helpless on the floor. Harold stares at him as he places his gun beside the door. Harold watches in shock as the soldier slowly dies. Later that night, Harold and a friend see a corpse hanging from a tree with a warning: looting will be punished by death. Despite this, Harold convinces his friend to steal. At a farmhouse, Harold steals hen eggs while his friend holds a large rock in front of the sleeping farmer. Unfortunately, Harold accidentally wakes the hen and tries to calm it down, but it's too late. The neighbors turn on the lights and the farmer wakes up. Harold tells his friend to throw the rock at the farmer, but his friend flees. The farmer shouts to his neighbor that they are thieves, but Harold quickly shoves the farmer, who crashes into the chicken coop. When he looks for his friend, the neighbors have already stabbed him to death. Harold escapes alone and trembling. The next day, he continues traveling until he finds an abandoned vehicle in a forest. Inside is a box of military uniforms. Without hesitation, Harold puts one on and eats leftover food from the basket, even pretending to be a captain. Finally, Freitag calls him. Harold nervously watches Freitag approach him, then suddenly Freitag salutes Harold. As Freitag prepares to drive the vehicle, Harold grabs the gun and waits for Freitag to open the door. But before he gets in, he asks for Freitag's identification document. Harold accuses Freitag of deserting, but Freitag defends himself. Harold then returns the form and gives Freitag an apple. As soon as they get into the vehicle, Harold orders Freitag to find him an inn. During the journey, Harold discreetly takes a notebook from the bag and puts it in his pocket, then quickly throws the bag outside without Freitag seeing. At night, they finally arrive at the inn, and Harold asks Freitag to settle in. The inn's customers stare at them perplexed. Still, the innkeeper assures Harold not to take it personally, as they don't like seeing people in uniform, especially German ones. Harold speaks to the innkeeper, informing him about the situation at the front. The owner is perplexed and looks at Freitag, who is standing behind Harold. The customers watch Harold walk to the table and sit down. Harold takes out his notebook to write and asks the innkeeper for his name. The innkeeper trembles and quickly admits to the violation of his inn, but Harold clarifies that he wants to return the stolen items. Everyone starts listening as Harold assures them he will return their lost money. Harold then orders Freitag to bring the innkeeper food. After Freitag serves the food, Harold tells the customers that he and Freitag will eat first. Inside Harold's room, he tidies the notebook while smoking. Suddenly, the innkeeper shouts outside. Harold looks out the window and the innkeeper informs him that they caught a thief. Harold goes out and examines the thief. Harold walks towards the innkeeper, takes a gun from him and shoots the thief mercilessly. Harold discusses his plans for tomorrow with Freitag. The next day, Harold and Freitag head to the farmhouse. Harold and Freitag find deserters inside the farmhouse, who quickly point their guns at them, but Harold shouts. When they lower their weapons, Harold orders Freitag to collect their marching orders to return to them. When Harold receives them, Kopensky explains that they were separated from their unit. Harold listens, but then an older woman interrupts, which annoys Kopensky, and he hits her. Harold sits at the table, and the deserters want to join him, so Harold accepts and gives them a mission. At the table, Harold toasts with his newly created military name, Task Force Harold, TFH. Inside the farmhouse, TFH prepares for their departure, while Kopensky asks Harold about their apparent mission. While cooking food in the forest, two soldiers approach. Harold gets out of his vehicle and allies with the two. On the way to the mission area, Kopensky impatiently asks Harold where they are going. When Harold answers, Kopensky rushes toward him and points his gun at him, but they hear a military police vehicle approaching. TFH gets into position while Harold stays in his truck. As the military police aggressively handle them, Harold demands to speak with their correctional officer. The officer approaches him, asking for Harold's papers, but Harold explains that they are on a special mission ordered by the highest authority. The officer is skeptical and asks for his documents again, but before Harold gives the officer the paper, he also asks for his form. The officer is speechless and allows them to pass, towing their vehicle to take them to Labor Camp 2. As they arrive near the camp, Captain Junker joins them. Inside the vehicle, Captain Junker threatens Harold's false identity. As they arrive at Labor Camp 2, Captain Junker invites Harold for a drink. While waiting for gasoline, as they walk, Captain Junker discusses prison life in the labor camps. In the barn, Harold throws a drink at Captain Junker when, suddenly, Shoot walks in. Captain Junker introduces Harold, mentioning Harold's special mission behind the front. Harold shares the successful mission to convince them. Captain Junker reminds Harold not to show clemency for the inmates who have escaped, and not to allow them to fall into enemy hands, and Harold agrees. Captain Junker and Shoot share their dilemma with the prisoners, persuading Harold to take responsibility. But before Harold accepts the deal, he tells Captain Junker and Shoot to take care of his men while he deals with the prisoners. When Captain Junker leaves, Shoot invites Harold to the inner sector. Upon entering the room, Harold witnesses Shoot disciplining the prisoners. He allows Harold to interrogate them. When Shoot leaves, Harold begins to interrogate, but no one answers. When Kopinski asks the prisoners about their crime, one finally answers. Harold nods, and Kopinski hits the prisoner. The prisoner dies, and Harold quickly orders Kopinski to line them up outside. While Kopinski orders the prisoners to empty their pockets, Freitag leaves the room and closes the door. They beg Harold to exclude the dead man, but Harold disagrees. On the other hand, Shoot visits Hansen to discuss granting Harold the possibility of seeing the prisoners in the detention barracks. When Shoot mentions to Hansen that Harold has authorization from the Führer, he reminds Shoot that Harold's commanding officer must accompany Harold. While walking, Shoot sees Kopinski carelessly hitting the prisoners outside. Then he goes to the barn bar to inform Harold. After Harold greets his entry, Shoot calls Brockhoff and orders him to dig a ditch for the dead prisoners. Inside Hansen's quarters, an officer knocks on his door and opens the window beside him. Hansen sees guards with the prisoners digging. Then Hansen quickly goes out, only to witness Kopinski shooting the prisoner. As he follows Kopinski, Hansen sees another brutal killing in the barracks. As Shoot and Harold drink, Hansen enters the bar and asks about the happenings at the camp. Shoot introduces Harold while Hansen asks for Harold's papers. Then Harold says he received authority from the Führer to take care of German combat forces. But Hansen warns him not to take any further action for the moment, as he has not yet received any orders from the Department of Justice. In Hansen's office, he calls Dr. Thiel on the phone, informing him about Harold's authorization to execute 5 prisoners. When Dr. Thiel asks about Harold's presence, Harold reports that he decapitated 5 prisoners for attacking him during the interrogation, which Shoot backs up. After they talk, Hansen informs Harold to wait until tomorrow before taking further action, as Dr. Thiel will contact the chief prosecutor regarding his papers. Shoot convinces Harold to arrange things because there will be no problems with the Department of Justice once they convince a Gauleiter, someone who authorizes, to be on their side. While Shoot talks to the Gauleiter in his quarters, Harold listens quietly. When Hansen feels that Harold and Shoot are watching him through the window, he gets up. Then Shoot answers the call from the Gauleiter as he successfully grants Harold permission to talk to Dr. Thiel. Harold looks at Hansen first, then speaks to Dr. Thiel. While Harold tells Shoot that Dr. Thiel would verify with the Gestapo, contact the prosecutor, and then inform Hansen. Shoot quickly opens the window to annoy Hansen. In just a minute, Hansen receives a call that the Gestapo grants Harold the proper authority. Inside the inner sector, Shoot orders the prisoners to form into groups of 30 and makes them march while singing. Hansen gives Harold a hard look before entering his barracks, and then Harold walks to a vehicle along with Shoot. As all the prisoners line up at the ditch, the army prepares. Harold and Shoot stand before them, watching as all the prisoners shed blood as the autocannon fires. When Shoot sees that some prisoners are still alive, he quickly orders the soldiers to shoot them all. While Harold watches his people shoot, the military approaches him and informs him about Harold's illegal actions. After the genocide, everyone finishes eating and goes back to work. They continue shooting the dead prisoners while someone suggests going to the ditch and checking if they are all still alive. Then Harold orders Freitag to do so. On the other hand, Hansen complains through a call to Dr. Thiel about Harold's improper disposal of the prisoners. As they talk, Hansen and the soldier hear unpleasant noises from outside. After the call, Hansen looks through a window and shouts at the soldiers for wanting peace and order. Then he leaves the barracks to make a report. When the party begins, Harold joins Schutt and his wife at the table, then turns his head toward the comedian beside him. As the comedians continue to perform, everyone enjoys the celebrations and sing. Then Schutt suddenly gives his speech about Harold and calls him to take his turn. As soon as Harold finishes his speech, the two soldiers end up fighting. The party continues. Harold invites two artists to join them. As they throw their drinks, the soldiers behind them watch their comrade fight. While Roger continues talking, Schutt suddenly grabs his neck after hearing this statement. The celebration turns into chaos. Everyone in the dining hall starts fighting, and some soldiers attack the sleeping comrade in the room. As Harold leaves the dining hall, he sees Brockhoff and his men beating the prisoners. Then he quickly runs towards them and orders Brockhoff to stop, but he continues. Frustrated, Harold pulls out a gun and shoots Brockhoff. To end the situation orderly, Harold ties up 4 prisoners. Then he points the gun at them, telling them to run, and so they did. Harold gives the gun to Roger and orders them to shoot. After Roger, Harold passes it to Schneider, who chooses to shoot himself. While the prisoners continue running, Roger continues shooting. Suddenly, Schutt's wife grabs the gun and shoots the last prisoner. The next day, Schutt goes to Harold's tent and reports that the local reserve police begin searching the areas. So Harold begins to order his men to terrorize the civilian population and threaten their comrades in arms. Returning to the labor camp, Schutt heads toward Harold when suddenly a landmine explodes. To their surprise, a plane starts bombing Labor Camp 2. Only a few survive. Then Harold promotes Freytag and Kapinski to the rank of corporal, while the others become sergeants. Only the Camp Kidbrick post remains at Labor Camp 2, and then the rest is a field. Traveling in a military vehicle with a truck called the Herald Express Tribunal, Harold and his men stop in front of the building. When he sees an older man coming out the door, he yells at him and calls him a traitor. Then his men catch him and shoot. Harold introduces himself as the head of the special detachment in the Herald Express Tribunal to the people and gives his speech to protect their homeland with his law and order. Outside the Hotel Oranian, the Herald Express Tribunal tries to steal things from people walking by, while Harold is accompanied inside the hotel. When Erica enters, she catches Harold's attention. When Harold is about to offer his hand to Erica for a dance, Kapinski quickly gets her. To his dismay, Harold orders his men to invade the room where Kapinski and Erica are staying, then joins Erica in her bed while Kapinski faces his punishment. In court, Harold accuses Kapinski of looting, robbery, and high treason. Then he tells everyone inside the court that he disgraced his attire. The Herald Express Tribunal finds him guilty and sentences him to death. They take Kapinski out of the hotel while the soldiers remove his clothes. Without further ado, Harold orders his men to shoot. Returning to the hotel, Harold and his men throw a party. Women begin to dance sexually in front of them while the men watch. The next day, the military police invade the hotel. They arrest everyone, including Harold. Dr. Kramer discusses Harold's crimes for impersonating an officer, organizing a massacre at World Camp 2, and hanging a mayor who waved a white flag. Then Harold interrupts. He corrects Dr. Kramer about hanging a mayor over a shooting. When Harold admits his crimes, Dr. Kramer sentences him to death by hanging. But Weyer disagrees. He sides with Harold and tells Dr. Kramer that, despite his military foolishness, Harold shows excellent military leadership qualities while protecting his homeland. Harold suspends his case and gives him an administrative transfer to the front. The film ends with Harold walking through the forest full of skeletal remains. Then, weeks after the war, the Royal Navy arrests Harold for stealing a loaf of bread and then discovers his war crimes. And a year later, the Allied forces execute Harold and 6 of his accomplices and sentence him to death. Harold is only 21 years old.